Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some huge games over there in the SEC. We have Ole Miss, Oklahoma, a massive one. I'm going to take Oklahoma to get the win there. Missouri, Vanderbilt, a huge one that I just can't not take Diego Pavia at this very moment. And then I think A&M gets a big time win over LSU. But let's get into some other battles. We got some big time conference battles that will have a lot to do with who's possibly joining some of those SEC teams in the CFP. Let's go ahead and start with the huge one in the American. South Florida at Memphis got a little bit of wind taken out of its sails with Memphis losing to UAB last week, but at the end of the day, still a huge game over there in the American. Could very well be one of the deciding factors. I don't want to say the deciding factor, but absolutely could be huge in the American race and huge in who the CFP representative from the Group of Five is. But these two teams are really, really fun. The question here is Brendan Lewis going to be able to go? I question if he's going to be able to. He went out of the game against UAB pretty early on. He's day-to-day right now. If he doesn't go, it sounds like it's going to be A.J. Hill, Arrington Maiden, possibly. It's a little bit of a drop-off. The offense played okay at times against UAB. It definitely missed the mark quite a bit. So the question is, how big of a hit is that, and can they overcome it in this football game? For USF, playing really high level football since they lost to Miami, continue to be the team that is kind of asserting themselves at the very top of this conference. Obviously, this one will be kind of the decider there, but they're a team that if they find a way to kind of get the run game going early in this one, I think they can really dominate this game. This is a Memphis team that absolutely can create offense, but if you can't run the ball with some of the running backs that they do have, I don't know where they find it from, especially if they have a backup quarterback in. So I think it's one of those games where I think Memphis will be fully ready to fight. I think they're going to come in really aggressive, really intentional. I think there's going to be a battle, if I'm being totally honest. But in the second half, I really can't see them hanging around, especially if they don't have Brendan Lewis or at least 100% of a Brendan Lewis. So I'm going to go with South Florida to win this one 38-24. I think it's a very good football team, and I think they have the ability to kind of plant their flag just a little bit in on the road on Saturday, and I think they do it in pretty emphatic fashion. I know this is pretty aggressive. I think they're going to be able to get it done, whether it's Brendan Lewis or someone else on the football field, really. BYU goes on the road to Iowa State, number 11 BYU at this point. An incredible, incredible win last week over Utah. For Iowa State, minus 2.5 in this game, which might be a little bit of a surprise to some people, but Ames, Iowa is a very, very interesting thing. But this is a very interesting one because Iowa State's been relatively good against the run. They've struggled at times. They definitely got gashed in certain games, but overall have been a relatively good group. Can they slow that down? Can they force Bear Mockmeyer to make plays with his arm? I mean, Utah couldn't. Now, I believe Iowa State's is a stronger run defense than Utah's, but I don't know by how much. So I do think there's an opening here for BYU to make a couple of plays on the ground. LJ Martin, Bear Mockmeyer, all of the guys that they have that can do that. I think they have an opening here. For right now, Iowa State's really beaten up. They have a couple of guys out. I believe they have a kicker out right now. There's a lot going wrong for the Iowa State Cyclones as of this very moment. Now, this could be a huge win, and it could be one that gets them back into the mix in the Big 12. I think it's going to be relatively hard to make all of that happen, but they have the ability to. And the Big 12, as we all know, can get very crazy in a hurry. So I think there's going to be moments where this goes back and forth. I think Utah is going to be able to get it kind of going on the ground. I think BYU also gave up some on the ground. So maybe Carson Hansen can be a huge thing in this game for Iowa State, limit this game just a little bit, kind of just shorten the possessions and make it just a little bit tougher on BYU to pull this one off. I think they're going to have a lot of trouble. I think BYU is such an intentional group. I think they do all of the little things correctly. I think they're going to come into this one ready. It's a very, very sketchy matchup, no doubt about it, but I'm going to pick BYU to win this one 24-20. I don't think it's pretty. I think it's one of those they have to gut out, but I'm not going to bet against this team to gut a game out. They're a very, very tough group, and I think they do enough on the ground, and I think they're able to, at the very least, get out of Ames with a win. Illinois goes on the road to Washington this upcoming weekend, and this is a huge one. In a lot of respects, this is a massive game when you talk about the fourth CFP team possibly from the Big Ten. There's a world where they only get three, and that's something I might talk about a little bit on Thursday as well, frankly. But Illinois has 2 losses to Ohio State and Indiana. A lot of people talking about where they're ranked right about now, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But at the end of the day, they have a real path to 10-2. That schedule opens up very nicely after this game. They get this win on the road, they could very well be that fourth team in there from the Big Ten. For Washington, a tougher slate the rest of the way. But let's say they get this win. It's really just Oregon at the end of the year. Who says? Who says they can't win? I know it's been a rough team that hasn't quite scaled their performance the way that we all want them to. I think they have the ability to win that game. So you get this win, everything is on the table for the Washington Huskies moving forward. Going to be relatively tough to win out the rest of the way for either of these teams, but I tend to believe whoever wins this one is firmly in the mix to be that fourth team from the Big Ten. But for Illinois, likely the team that people are most confused by, just how good they are, I guess is the big question. They've done some really incredible things and have been one of the more productive offenses in a lot of different ways. They rolled, or they got a nice win over USC where they probably should have won by a little bit more, and then Duke, where you could argue they probably should have won by a little bit less. But at the end of the day, they got rolled by Ohio State and Indiana. Where do they stand? How good are they? Where do they fit into the Big Ten? I think we'll find out on Saturday. I think we'll find out just where they fit in, at the very least within the Tier 2 group. I think there's that top three, and then there's all the teams kind of fighting for that fourth spot. I think Illinois could get to the very top of that if they find a way to win this one. Damon Williams has really struggled against Ohio State. The Illinois defense is going to give him some more openings. Can Luke Altmaier take over this one and kind of get back to the football he was playing before some of these tough games really kicked in? He was playing elite football in a lot of different ways. It's going to be really interesting to see which one of these quarterbacks can step up, which run game can help them out, because both these defenses are better against the run than they are against the pass. Jonah Coleman, Caden Fagan, which one can take over this one? I'm going to lean towards Jonah Coleman and Damon Williams, especially when they're at home. I think this is a very good football team that's missed the mark a couple of times this year, but I think they have the ability to get this win. I think Washington wins this one, and I think we could be looking at a world where Washington's playing Oregon with a chance to punch their ticket to the CFP. It would be a weird time, but I do think that's a reality. I think whichever team wins this one could be walking into the last game of the season with a very good chance to get into the CFP, but a huge one, I'll take Washington for right now. Houston at number 24, Arizona State. ASU coming off a huge one over Texas Tech, obviously a team that badly needed it and was able to get it done. Houston just kind of quietly playing really good football. They're 6-1 right now, 3-1 in the conference, and they're a team that can do some really incredible things, especially if they're able to win this game. The schedule's not easy. The schedule does open up just enough for this team to do some really incredible things. So it's going to be really awesome to see how this one unfolds. I think Arizona State, the big-time question is, are you going to be able to run the ball? Both these teams are run-first teams with Dean Connors for Houston, Raleek Brown for Arizona State. Really good teams, and then they use the athleticism of the quarterbacks and Connor Wegman and Sam Levitt to add to the run game a lot. So it's going to be awesome. I think Arizona State obviously got themselves back into it. They still have a road trip to Iowa State on the board, so got to be a little bit careful there. But if you win this one, they have a path. They should be on a path to the Big 12 championship once again, and a chance to go back to the CFP for Houston. The big-time question I have here is, can they hold up against Sam Levitt? Because they kind of got diced up at times against Noah Fafita. Can they find a way to hold back this Arizona State offense that tends to find their chunks about 60 yards at a time? So got to be very careful when you talk about Sam Levitt and that football team. He can do some really dangerous things in a hurry. So I think this Houston team is very dangerous. I think they can do some really incredible things moving forward, knock off some big-time teams in the Big 12 and kind of ruin some seasons, adds a little bit of chaos at the end of the year. But I tend to believe ASU is in a position where backs up against the wall and they're ready to go. I think it happened last week. I think that defense playing elite football right now. I'll take Arizona State to win this one 27-17. I think they're a very good football team that is just kind of finding who they are right now. It's a little bit late in the season, but I think they're finding the groove. I think Tim Levitt is playing his football finally, and I think that defense is flying around at a level that I hadn't seen throughout this year thus far. So going to be really fun to watch those one unfold. They're going to have a lot to do with what those, let's say 9 to 12 spots in the Big 12 or in the CFP are going to end up looking like. You could have an Arizona State or a Houston there. You could have a Washington or an Illinois. You could have a BYU, maybe an Iowa State gets all the way back into it. And then obviously that South Florida-Memphis matchup could be huge for that group of 5 spot. So a lot of playoff implications. Maybe not the massive marquee matchups we've gotten used to over the last couple of weeks, but some huge ones nonetheless, and we're going to talk about them all as they unfold. I got some more upset alerts coming up right after this. We got some upset alerts. Indiana, maybe they're in trouble. Georgia Tech, maybe in a little bit of trouble. I know for a fact Texas is in trouble. So we'll talk about it all right after this, so stick with us.